Well, hey everybody, welcome to the conversation that we're going to have today. So excited that my friend Brent is
Yes,
here, and Brent has an incredible story and an incredible desire, I think, to share about how God has led you
that's the truth.
during your story. And so we're excited to share it with you today. And Brent, maybe you should just start by just going back a little ways
Sure,
to where your journey kind of began,
sure.
either with the Lord or with everything you've been walking through.
Yeah. Well, my journey with the Lord, I mean, that's really taken shape more so in the last 5 years. I'm a son of a preacher, grew up in the church, and all the way through those years, they talk about the PK kids are always the worst kids.
Yeah,
You know,
that's us.
that's us. And there was a point in my life where I think I tried to live into that a little bit. And, but then you find your place and you find your way. But, in the past 5 years, especially since my story has changed in the last 5 years, my faith has really changed in the last 5 years. And I've really been more proactive with it and really been more personal. It's
Yeah.
really made a difference in my life and what I've gone through. And, my story as far as what's been going on is, 4.5 years ago, it was January of 2017. I was at home with my two young kids. At the time, I was a stay-at-home father. I had three kids, and I had a 6-month-old and a four-year-old at home at that time, and I had a seizure, and fell, hit my head on the door jamb, was out for I guess a good half hour, and wake up, and my son still tells stories about it to this day. How he remembers finding me in my closet with blood running down my face, and had no idea what was going on, and end up in the hospital, and at that point they find out that I have a brain tumor. And they do that. They find the brain tumor, do some other tests. They find another tumor on my lung at that point. So those are the only two we had. And I spent some time in the hospital here in Bismarck. And I was actually told at that time that I had potentially 6 months to live.
Wow.
Yeah. And you talk about a wake-up call in life. That's a major wake-up call.
You're in your late 30s.
I was in my late 30s. I was 39 at the time, turned 44 here in August. So that was a major wake-up call. And it was, I was fortunate. My dad was in town and some of my good friends. So, we had four of us that stood around me in a hospital room and prayed around my bed, and those were prayers about saving life. And, wow, that it gives me chills right here to think about it, to go back to that place. But, after that, took a trip to Mayo. Went out there and went and met with doctors out there. Was lucky enough to have some friends that had some very good connections out there that got us set up, and ended up at Mayo on a Thursday. Meet with some doctors there, and turn around and they go, well, we got to get that brain tumor out before it moves on and progresses and causes more issues. So they're on a Thursday, and by Tuesday morning, I was having brain surgery.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a 8-hour procedure. Got a nice scar here. My son calls it my Darth Vader scar, because he was big into that movie at the time. But so I had brain surgery there.
There's a lot going on back here around that time too, because you were involved in the community.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I was the head basketball coach at St. Mary's High School here for the past 8 years, up until this past season. I just finished this last year. Just resigned from that position. Unfortunately, my health hasn't allowed me to do that anymore. So yeah, there was a ton going on back here. I got back to town. They thought I would probably have to be done coaching at that point, but came back to town, and I was out of the hospital within 3 days, which was crazy. But it was support of a lot of people praying for me, and being around for me. But get back here, and coaches around the community had started making yellow Brent Strong T-shirts to support me. And it was a week to the day. We had a home game back in our gym against Bismarck High, and I was able to be back on the bench for that day.
Wow.
Which was surreal to think. I mean, I remember I got the chance to talk before that game, just to say thank you to everybody who was there for supporting me and for praying for me and for everything they'd done for me. And I'm looking at the clock going, it's 7 o'clock. And I'm going, a week ago at this time, I just stepped out of brain surgery. And I'm standing on a sideline in front of 1,500 people saying thank you for just supporting me and praying for me. And, so that was a pretty surreal experience to be back on a bench. And my doctors weren't too excited about it.
Yeah.
But they told me at the time, whatever's positive in your life and you're passionate about, we want you to get back to. So I got back to that, and they're like, make sure you're taking things careful and sitting down and letting your assistant coaches take charge and that. And, I think that lasted for about a half, and then it was old habits, and you're
right
back
in.
into it. Especially when it's a crosstown rival playing
Yeah.
Bismarck High, and a good friend of mine coaches over there, so that was so much fun. But I think my oldest daughter, she's 13 now, so at the time she had to be 8 or 9. She scolded me pretty good after. She's like, "You were supposed to be sitting, Dad," and there I am up and down and
Couldn't help it.
coaching. It's part of life.
What was it like that week? I mean, you're coaching and the kind of the victory of being back in the game a week later, but also you've been told you have 6 months to live and you've had this major surgery. I mean, what's going on emotionally? What's going on at night in your head when nobody else is around? Like,
Wow.
what were you walking through?
Wow. I mean, you talk about a roller coaster,
Yeah.
up and downs and highs and lows. And, the lows of thinking I might have 6 months to live, and then you go through a basketball game and you go through the highs of winning and those kind of things. It was, yeah, just ups and downs of emotions. I mean, you just run the gamut of everything because you're scared, you're hopeful. But yeah, it was a very trying time, that first goal, because you just don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I still don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Yeah.
It still goes that way. So yeah, but that first week was crazy. But being able to be back and be back around a team and be back around normalcy was an awesome part of it.
What, I mean, in those days, I think sometimes we hear somebody walks through something like what you went through, they get a diagnosis, and what did people do that was like the biggest blessing to you, or how did you feel the most supported?
Well, yeah, I mean, shortly after that, those T-shirts and stuff was such a big part of it. And I was getting text messages from all corners of the state. The basketball community around this state is very tight knit, and to have support from so many was unbelievable. I mean, you see a lot of people go through something like that, and they might have 30 people in their corner, and I'm getting text messages and phone calls, and I felt like I had 30,000, 300,000 people supporting me. We got to the end of that season and it was the regional tournament. And we get to the regional tournament. Every team at the regional tournament was wearing Brent Strong T-shirts.
Wow.
And they were littered throughout the Civic Center. It's like I said, I have goosebumps right now talking about it, but it was crazy just to see the amount of support that I was getting. And we put on a fundraiser, or the coaches all got together, put on a big pancake feed breakfast at St. Mary's High School. And, I was like, well, maybe there'll be a couple hundred people show up. There was 1,500 people that came that day. And just to feel that, to feel the support you're getting from so many people was unbelievable. And it's been so crazy to see how God has put people in my life throughout this process.
Yeah.
And place them in my path that you just never would have thought would have been there.
Yeah.
And that's been crazy. And that was, and that's how I found Evangel was that year also. I used to go to another church here in town. I went to Easter service that year at the other church, and I got done with church that day, and it was a morning service, and you guys were putting on the 12 o'clock service down at the Civic Center. And I drove by one of those billboards and thought, I'm going to go to church again. And I drove down there and then came down up front and got to pray with some fellow people there. And it was just, it was something very touching. And, like I said, it's just crazy how God has put people in my life throughout this whole process.
Yeah, I was thinking about the pancake feed, and I knew all about all that stuff going on for this coach in town, but didn't even know you.
Right.
But, I mean, you're so loved in the community, and it impacted, your story has already impacted so many people that, a lot of people heard about it or know kind of some of what you walked through.
Right.
So that was 4 years ago. So what's kind of transpired since then?
Since then, wow. Yeah, I mean, I had brain surgery at that point. I've more or less been in treatment since. I've been in and out of chemos. I couldn't even tell you how many regimens or sessions I've been through. I just finished another round of chemo. I've had lung surgeries. I spent 6 weeks in Rochester for radiation therapy. I've had a number of different radiation therapies spent here. So I've kind of been through it, but I've been so blessed and so fortunate because I've never once been sick. I've never once been nauseous and thrown up, which is crazy when you think about all that I've been through and all that's been stuffed into this body. And it's to me, it's been a blessing. And I think it's a lot of it's been because of a positive attitude, because they talk so much about how you approach things in life. And especially you hear that from nurses. I had a couple nurses talk to me about that. They're like, Brent, your attitude is providing you so much. And they're like, it'd be great if you'd want to go talk to some other patients. I'm like, sure, let me, I would love to. And I think that's been a big part of it is just remaining positive and keeping hope. and trusting God that God has a plan. And I think I told you before we sat down that 1 Peter verses 6 and 7 have been huge in my life. And those talk about, you're going to go through a lot of things in life, trials and tribulations, and take joy in that. Take joy in that, because through those things, God is going to be revealed through you. And I really feel like that has happened. And I was fortunate enough to be at the Final Four a couple of years ago when it was in Minneapolis, and I heard one of the coaches talk, and he's a Christian, and he was talking about the big thing that he sits on is let the light that's inside of me shine brighter than the light that's on me. And I took that to heart, because being a coach in this town, you're on a stage, you have a platform and people get to see you. And that's been something I really took to heart, that, I want to see God's light shine through me, and I hear a lot of people say different things to me about, well, coach, gosh, you're so strong and you're such an inspiration. And it's not me that's so strong. It's not me that's so inspiring. It's the God that lives inside me who's giving me this strength. And, so that's been a huge part of my journey and being able to share my message.
Yeah. So I know you know Jesus and have walked with him kind of through this whole trial. And tell me about the conversations through the highs and lows, the difficulties, through the times when you're feeling good and the times when maybe you get a diagnosis you weren't hoping for. And
right.
How have you walked with Jesus through those times? What are the conversations you've had with him, or had to navigate in your own soul?
Yeah. I talked a little bit about the 6 weeks I spent in Rochester doing radiation. And that was radiation that was done to my brain. So at that time, if you know much about it, you get put in a radiation mask, is what it's called. So it's this mask they form to your face, and then they click it to the table. So it's a very claustrophobic experience. And they put this bulb over top of you. And I don't like small spaces and being claustrophobic. And, the first couple times I went through it, I had 36 of those treatments. And the first couple times I'm like, how am I ever going to get through this? But what I did would pray, would just talk to God. And it's so crazy now that I almost miss it, because those were times. It's so hard in our busy lives to carve out that time, when it's just you and God to talk. And that was an opportunity for me to just quiet everything around me, because that's all I had to do, and to really focus in and pray. And you go through that and you talk about, what were those conversations like? A lot of it was about hope. A lot of it was about trust.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was about, God, I don't know where you're going to take me. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. But I do always know that he's the one who controls tomorrow. And that's all that, all I can control is today and where I'm at. And so that was big things going through there. So those conversations with God have been all over the place. There's been conversations of anger.
Yeah.
There's been conversations of fear. But there's been a lot more of conversations of hope, and a lot more conversations of being blessed. Because I had a good friend of mine, a pastor at another church here, Pastor Paul Herr. Me and him talked a lot when this first started, and it could have easily been, why me? Why are you giving this to me? And we kind of worked through that and turned it around very quickly. And it wasn't why me, it was God use me. How can you use me through this? And I really feel that's like what has happened through this whole process, is he's been able to use me, and use me on the platform I was able to have to be able to share my story and share my faith and share how God continues to work through me.
Yeah, I was thinking about how I listened to your story, and I think it'd be so easy to be angry.
Right.
Or it'd be so easy to fall victim to what's happening, in your life. And I mean, there's others that are walking through similar things,
For sure.
Or a different kind of trial. And what would you say to them? How do you not let yourself get angry? How do you not give in? I know you're just overall an optimistic guy,
Right.
You have hope for the future, but how, in those weak moments, do you have any thoughts about how you would overcome that?
Well, in those weak moments, I mean, that's one of those things you always go back to what's your foundation. And I've been fortunate enough, like I said, to be raised as a PK kid. And even though at times I tried to steer away from that path, that was always my foundation that was built. So that was something that I was always able to go back to, the things that were instilled as me as a kid. And I can still always remember to this day, my dad used to finish every sermon as a preacher, and he would always say, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring or your next week is going to bring. It may bring sickness, it may bring wealth, but I know this, your God is going to be there with you no matter what. And that's been a big part in what I've shared with other people. I know I got to talk at the Fellowship of Christian Athletes breakfast at the state basketball tournament a couple of years ago. And got to talk with those kids about my story and talked a lot about that. And that's one thing I've realized, no matter what I may be going through, and some people think, well, it's so huge what you're going through. It's no bigger than what somebody else may be going through. A lot of those kids had their own issues, and, they might be going through a tough time with school or with a friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend. And I talked a little bit about that day, and it was so cool because, I get to run into kids after that. They're like, you don't know how much that changed my life, just hearing you talk about that you're up there talking about your issue and you're fighting a life-threatening disease, and you're going, my problem is no bigger than what you might be fighting through. And it's true, because we all fight something, and we all got to find a way through it, and I'll keep moving forward each day.
Yeah. So what are you looking forward to as you move forward each day?
That's a hard part to really think about, because you fight cancer, and it's really everything in your life revolves around every 3 months.
Yeah.
Because every 3 months you're getting another scan, and in the next 3 months you're getting another scan. So you're going, okay, where are you taking me in life, God, and where's life taking us? And it's hard to look past the next 3 months because you just never know. And for me, it's I have 3 kids. So I have a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 13-year-old, and it's for me is to keep living and keep being a great dad, and being able to provide for them and show them, that how it is to fight, and no matter what comes your way, because tough times are going to come, adversity is going to come in life, but to keep moving forward and keep believing and keep hope alive.
One of the really interesting things about walking through difficulty or grief that I've seen, whether it's somebody who has a loss in their life or a disease or an illness, is that people will come to you and they'll actually process their grief through you.
Sure.
Right? And I'm sure you've experienced that.
Yeah.
People they're so sad or distressed about what's going on that they come to you and they're well-meaning, but they're actually processing that through you, or the loss of somebody through you. And how have you learned to embrace those moments? When really you're the one walking through difficulty, but others are having to deal with it and they're coming to you with it. Have you experienced that?
Yeah. I mean, putting my story out there has allowed that to happen, and that's been a big part of me wanting to put my story out there, because if people have been able to see what I've been able to walk through, that they can gain strength from that, then awesome. And if it's one person who's able to do that, then I feel like that's a win. In my book. And, it's hard because you don't know exactly everybody's personal story and exactly what they want to hear. But, I share a lot with them of things I've gone through and things that I've been able to take hold of and really go, Philippians 4:13 is a big one in my mind, that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's been a big walk. And that's actually something that started with me because I lost a friend of mine, probably 10 years ago now, to a brain aneurysm or brain cancer. And that was a verse that he held on to. And then cancer hit with me, and I kind of held on to that one too. And so I try to share that with people too, that, no matter what you're walking through, God's there because he's going to give you strength and help you to get through.
Yeah. It's really amazing. I just have so much respect for you and your story, and just thinking about, man, what you said about every 90 days. Every 90 days. You don't know what you're going to be facing. Yeah. And your willingness to still be present. Yeah. And to not give up and to be optimistic. And it's really inspiring.
Well, there's been many times where I felt like giving up. I'm still in the midst of this fight. I have a bracelet on my hand today because I just left the hospital this morning doing blood draws and met with my doctor. And, we're at a point right now in my story where we don't know what comes next because we've kind of exhausted a lot of options. You go through 5 years of chemo, you've kind of done everything, and now we're at the point going, okay, what's next, God? Where's the next treatment at? Is that a clinical trial? Is that immunotherapy? And the type of cancer I have is Ewing sarcoma. It's a bone-based cancer. It's mostly found in adolescents. So being 43, there's not a lot of studies out there, not a lot of stuff being done on it. So, you get discouraged at times. I was in Houston back in January at MD Anderson, hoping to get involved in a clinical trial there. And unfortunately, that fell through because I had developed a blood clot, and that disqualified me for the clinical trial. And, that was a very hard time because at that point I thought, well, this might be the answer, but that wasn't where God wanted me. And it was so funny. I think I was talking to Pastor Bryce about that time, and right after that happened is when the floods happened down, or not I think it was the floods and the hurricanes that came through Houston, and everything got shut down down there. And I'm going, well, maybe God didn't want me there, because where would I have been living? What would I have been doing? Because I was supposed to be there for 6 weeks, and I was like, where would I have been staying, or what would I have done? I just don't know. And I just looked at it as that was God telling me, this isn't the time. This isn't the place for you now. And I have another plan for you, Brent. And I continue to just put my hope and trust in him, and that he's got a plan for me, and he's going to have an answer for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just inspired by you. I mean, 5-year battle, and there's like no resignation in your spirit or in your tone. There's just like hope. And I know there's difficult moments, but and every time I've talked to you, and heard parts of your story.
Well, that's kind of what it is. You go through something like this. There's a lot that's been taken from me through this journey. My health has been taken from me. Coaching, unfortunately, now has been taken from me, which is a huge passion. It's just not something I can do anymore. And you have those things taken from me, but I know one thing that's never going to be taken from me, and that's my hope in God. That's my trust in God. And I know that God is always going to be there walking with me no matter what I go through.
Yeah.
And that gives me such comfort, and it gives me such, perseverance to continue to take steps forward each and every day.
Yeah, I know one of your passions now is, and I hear you say it, but I just want to be a light to other people.
Yeah.
And so take a minute or whatever, and what do you just want to say to people about your journey, about the hope you have, about walking through the last 5 years? What would be the stamp that you would put on that time?
Well, I think the big stamp you put on it is you can't control tomorrow. You can't control what's going to happen. I mean, any one of us that's in this room could walk out of here and something could happen on the way home. And it's not just that I have cancer. Like I said, it could happen to any one of us. So I think if you take anything out of this, is to keep putting your hope and trust in God, because you keep your eyes open, you keep your ears open, you keep your heart open. He's going to keep putting people in your path that are going to keep moving you forward. Being a part of Evangel here and being able to be around, I've had so many people now in this church that have been a part of that men's group and connect group that I've got to be involved in. And those guys being a big part of my life who check in on me and make sure I'm doing okay. And, so that would be my message, is just to continue to keep the hope and continue to keep believing and continue to keep trusting in God's plan, because ultimately he has a plan for all of us. Yeah. And we don't know when that's going to end, or, when that day's going to come. But, I don't know, that could be tomorrow, that could be 20 years from now, it could be 30 years from now. But, I just know whatever's going to happen, God has a plan for me.
Yeah, that's such wisdom, because I think a lot of people live afraid of the 6-month diagnosis,
right.
When the reality is you could only have 3 days.
Yeah.
Any one of us could be on a much shorter timeline. We just haven't been told that.
Right.
Right.
And that's really changed my perspective on how I live.
Yeah.
It's the here and now.
Yeah.
It's not, obviously in life you need to be preparing for what could come, but I try to live within each day and take advantage of each day, especially with my kids, because I don't know how much time I might have with them. I don't know when that might be taken from me. And it was like coaching, unfortunately it came to an end because I just physically couldn't do it on a day-to-day basis anymore. And that's tough too, because that was a huge part of being able to share my strength and my story, as I was able to push into young people, and be an influence in their lives, hopefully a positive influence in their lives. But, that's something that I miss, and, something I've been trying to find another way to help and find that purpose again.
Well, I think you're still pushing a lot of positive influence into the lives of young people.
Appreciate it.
Even if it's not from the bench.
Right. Right.
Anymore.
Right. But being able to coach at a school like St. Mary's, that was a private, Catholic school, that was such a great blessing in my life, because it allowed us to have God in the equation with what we're doing. We got to pray with our players before and after games, which was so huge. The relationship you get to develop with those young kids, it wasn't just a player-coach relationship, because they would see my faith and they could see me live it out, and I could talk about that with them and pray with them. And So that was a very awesome thing to be able to be a part of.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share?
Oh, I think we've kind of covered a lot of it. Got any other questions for me?
No, I'm sure there's other people that will,
Sure.
and they're going to hear your story, and there's going to be people that reach out and say, I'm walking through the same thing or having some sort of difficulty. And I just appreciate your willingness to be transparent,
Yeah.
And sit down and
Well, it's like I said, it's not why me, it's God, how can you use me through this? And I see this as a part of that, and if my story is able to touch somebody else or give somebody hope and encouragement, that's what God is using me for at this point. And I feel very blessed for that opportunity that he's done that and has chosen me to walk this path. And I think that's what a lot of people lose sight of when they go through adversity or go through a negative time or hell scares. God has chosen you for your path, and he placed me on this path for a reason, and I might not understand it, but isn't that what faith is? It's trust in what we don't understand,
right.
And don't completely know. And God's way bigger and his plans are way bigger than any of us have any idea of what they are. And I don't know what his ultimate end game is, but I know he has a plan. And for me to just be able to buy into that and keep moving forward is what I decide to do.
Well, he's definitely using your story, and he's going to continue to do that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Why don't you, if you're willing, why don't you just pray for people that are watching?
Sure.
And probably coming from a variety of different places in life or different levels of relationship with you, or maybe some who are walking through the same kind of thing. And, we'll pray for you too.
Okay.
Continue to.
Yeah.
It would be cool just to hear you pray out of your own test,
Okay.
that you've been walking through for other people.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Dear Lord, boy, what a blessing it is to be here today and be able to be used by you, Lord. It has been an unreal journey that I've walked the last number of years, and it's unreal the ways you continue to use me, God. And I pray that my story today may be one that reaches out to other people around this church, Lord, other people around this community. And I just pray that it's a story of hope. It's a story of encouragement, Lord, and a story of courage. And I hope that maybe somebody could take a little something from what I've gone through, and no matter what they may be going through, and maybe that resonates with them, and they may be motivated by that. And boy, God, what a blessing it is to be able to have people around who you can push into and who want to support you, Lord. And I thank you for the people around this place. I thank you for the people in this church, Pastor Josh, Pastor Bryce, and so many other pastors around here that I've gotten to know, and so many other people around this congregation, Lord. I just thank you for the blessings that you continue to put in front of us. I thank you for the blessings you continue to put in front of us as we walk forward. And I just hope, Lord, that each and every one of us continues to keep our hope and our trust in you as we move forward, Lord. Lord, I pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Love you, man.
Love you, brother.
Thankful to know you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.